This video will be looking at the Clincheck software. So in the order history, click on the Clincheck icon, which will load up the software. In our case, we're using Clincheck 2.8, which at the time of this video is the latest version. So what loads up now is the Clincheck software. We see here a computer-generated model, which is from the scanned impressions that were submitted. The information that we see coming up here are the interproximal reductions. As an example, this information bubble shows you 0.2 millimeters to be reduced before aligner 1 between tooth 1.1 and 2.1. So this information is also available as submitted with the retainers, but it's nice to be able to see when and where the reductions are to be made. Starting up here in the upper left, we're going to see again the order history. So we see Invisalign full arch, any refinements, and that will modify the appearance of the generated image. Again, this image goes back to the patient file. Here we see the images, which we saw in the previous video. Same with prescription and treatment preferences. Now, the settings of the software have been already preset to include the Canadian or universal numbering system as opposed to the American one. The navigation here, you have the ability to control the views using your mouse or by these icons. Now it's much easier to use the mouse than just trying to navigate with these icons. So this is just a translational movement. You can zoom in and out. But again, all this can be achieved with the mouse. This is further magnification with a finer control. This is the most important type of movement, which you have your three planes here. So again, trying to navigate using the wheels here is a bit cumbersome and difficult, unless you're a mathematician. But if you use your mouse, which I will show you next, it's much easier. And this is another area, another icon which allows you to zoom into a specific region. So just by using your mouse here and clicking on the appropriate type of movement you want, you can achieve movement much easier. Zooming out a little bit, not too much, and clicking on the rotational will really allow you to see the most information. Now up here on the upper right, we'll show you different views. So here we have starting off on the anterior, which we saw. Let's see, we go to right buccal, left lingual. But all these views can be achieved by just using your mouse and zooming in to see whatever area you particularly want to see. So if we go back to the original view, which was the anterior, here we can see what views we want to see. So an occlusal will show us basically each arch, and a composite will show you a variety of different views. I find the most information can be gathered from the single view. Now if you want to see an unobstructed view, you can look at an arch unopposed. So these icons up here will show you upper and lower arches, and you're able to view the teeth without the opposing arch. The rest is not really so useful. I mean, you can number the teeth, or you can just count them yourself. You can show the composite buttons or have them hidden. This is the interproximal reduction instructions, which you can just hide. This icon will show, we will come back to it, but it shows basically the initial teeth location and where they will be. The grid is, again, something to measure movement. Very, very cumbersome to use. So you have your different axes here, which you can rotate the grid. But it's, as you can maybe see it's a little bit finicky, and it's quite difficult to place spatially. And as for its accuracy as well, we'll do some tests when we talk about the movement, but as for now, we'll just leave it alone. The rest here is pretty just gimmicky here. You can change the color of the teeth. Not really useful. So the main point of using Clincheck here is to observe the movements and look at the number of trays and determine whether we're satisfied with the proposed treatment. On the bottom here you see a blue strip and a red strip. So the blue is referring to the upper arch, and we can see that there's 12 trays proposed. The bottom shows the red strip and 7 trays proposed. So clicking on play, we can see the proposed movements. You can click on rewind and view it again. You can change your angle, get a better view. So here we see the proposed movements. Going back to what I showed you before, showing the initial tooth position and any differences. So we see some tilting, some extrusion. And again, using the options we discussed, we can actually gather quite a bit of information about the proposed movements. Using our not so user-friendly grid here, we can attempt to ascertain how much movement is taking place. But again, it's not very practical to be using this. So if we position the grid to where we think that the incisal edges were initially, and then look at the movement, I mean, we're not getting a lot of information, but we do see that there are some intrusion here. We can also proceed on our own, looking at the movement of the trays one by one. That will give us some greater information. And what we want to look at, it basically is the physiological possibility of having the teeth move in whatever direction in the number of trays provided. So if we see a huge amount of intrusion in very few trays, you might want to communicate that to the lab and have a few more trays created. Now, ironically, the most important part of Clincheck is what's not seen. It's what's actually hidden. So if you click on this arrow over here, we're going to see the window pane where you can actually communicate with the lab. Most clinicians don't tend to communicate too much, but you can have as much communication as you want so you can get a reliable product. The first comment is usually always the what was received and what's being planned, your prescription information. Here we see a comment was made to the technician: do not increase the overjet, improve the remaining overjet. Okay, so that's important. So what they do is they modify the case, they modify their Clincheck, and they will resubmit it to you. So all this is very important information. You have as much control as you want. You have to remember that these are technicians who are doing these movements. They're not dentists, so you are responsible for the amount of treatments being done. You are responsible for the quality of the case. All in all, this program does give you a lot of information, and as much as you put into it, you can get out from it. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how to order retainers and a wrap-up of any other miscellaneous things on the Invisalign site.